There are things that you are saying on a daily basis all the time that are both undermining your confidence, and when you're speaking, even if you're confident, you're giving people the impression that you're not. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Hey, you leader, entrepreneur, business owner, solopreneur, whatever you call yourself, we know you're a visionary business builder, wealth seeker looking to combine a passion for doing good with leading consciously. It's time to shift from a traditional focus of pure wealth accumulation to one that integrates well-being and fulfillment. You're here for a purpose, and it's time to shine your light. So here we go. Welcome back to the Conscious Edge podcast. I'm your host, Alicia St. Germain. I am here with my regular co-host, Jonathan Duggar. I'm so happy you're back.
Good. I'm happy to be back. Very happy to be back. I almost said good morning. It's like, but it might not be morning when you're listening to this. So good day.
Not at all awkward.
Awkward.
If you are just joining us, I want to say welcome. We're so excited to have you. The Conscious Edge podcast is all about exploring what it means to be human, building a business, all the things that we go through. And we just have very candid conversations about what we're going through, things we've heard other people going through. We have guests on, so it's a lot of fun. We keep this very conversational. If you enjoy what you hear today, please make sure you hit the follow button or subscribe wherever you're listening from. We're doing a new thing now, Jonathan. We are going to be having videos now on YouTube. So for those of you who like to actually watch alongside, you can actually go subscribe to the YouTube channel and you'll get to see our faces and all the weird faces we make. And the real things that happen here on camera as well.
Yeah. That's not intimidating or awkward at all.
Super excited, right? So if you don't know us, I have a company, The Conscious Edge, that I created to help women entrepreneurs work through the mindset, the hidden things that get in their way and keep them from success when they realize that they've created a certain level of success and they know that now they are the biggest block to what's next. They have the strategy, they have gone out, done business, but now they're hit a plateau. That's the kind of work that I do. Jonathan, in case people don't know you, please let them know a little bit about what you do.
I'm a consulting psychologist and I have my own consulting practice and work in a lot of corporate settings and with individuals, focusing on increasing performance and productivity, effectiveness, efficiency. I also do a lot of training around subjects related to communication, to strategy and implementation, leadership, things like that. But other part of my world is I work in holistic health and wellness and work with groups and individuals on how to live a balanced life, how to live in a holistic fashion where we give attention and credence in a mindful way to all of those facets of ourselves and our worlds that impact us as individuals and impact our planet and our relationships.
Love it. Yeah, we're very aligned in the way that we think about and approach life and business. And so we have a lot of fun doing this podcast. So I told you there are things that you are saying that are undermining your confidence and giving others the impression that you are not confident. And here is the reality. A few weeks ago, I recorded a podcast by myself and I wasn't feeling up to it. Like I didn't want to do it. And so I essentially did an entire podcast about showing up, doing the reps, how you show up even when you don't want to. And I noticed that I was doing something over and over again during the podcast. I did it 3 times. Now you're going to want to go back and listen to the podcast. I did it 3 times. I kept using the word actually, and I was doing it in the context of any workshops, coaching, training. I said, I actually have a company. I actually am doing a workshop next week. And I was actually coaching last week in another community. So 3 times I said the word, and it was always in the context of training. And I thought, well, that's very fascinating because as a coach, I don't know, I'm sure you do this. You're trained in neuro-linguistic programming and you listen to people's language all the time.
Mm-hmm.
We pay attention to what you say.
Yeah. And how it makes us feel. What's the response from it? What's the, reaction or action from it? So, yeah.
So,
absolutely.
And I pay attention to what I say because I find that my words that I use at different points in my life are windows into what my unconscious is making things mean and big assumptions I might be holding, which if you don't know what a big assumption is, it's basically a set of rules that your brain made up in the unconscious about the way the world works and how you exist in it. And it causes you to act accordingly based on feelings.
Exactly.
So we want to talk about that today. You have a lot of experience with this, Jonathan. So when you have someone you're coaching and they say things, like what kinds of things do they say?
Well, let's take it even bigger picture first. So there's a lot of solid research behind the concepts that the words we use and the language that we use, even if it's intended for someone else, an individual, an audience, that language also impacts you. So it's basically the messages or the words, the language you use for yourself. So you've got to think of that too. It's like, where is this coming from? Like you said, is unconsciously driven, but it's also what does it do to you when you say things in a certain way or you use certain language? So there are a lot of things now in corporate culture and everyday life that we use. And one of mine that I tend to over focus on sometimes because it's used so rampantly. I think that's a word. In our culture are variations of the word honestly. Honestly, and that is actually a variation of an honestly. So those terms are called qualifiers. So honestly, or to be honest with you, or if I'm honest with you. So that one that's a NLP practitioner's playground, that one particular one, because that's been coached on probably more than any other single word or variation of word, simply because, and especially in sales settings, when you say, well, honestly, that negates truthfulness and honesty of anything else you've said. You're basically saying, well, I've been dishonest up to this point, but now I'm going to be honest with you about this thing. Now, even though that's not in the literal, that's not said, hasn't been said, but the response, the reactivity to that, the unconscious reactivity to that is, okay, they must be hiding something. There must be deception going on. So why do we say things like that? Why would we do that? Why were you saying actually? Where was that coming from?
Yeah, and I thought about that. And I know that there was a lot happening that particular week. I was going through some things and we all have self-doubt, right? So it's self-doubt, 100%. And
absolutely.
I think it's hard for people sometimes to admit that they have self-doubt, but we all use those words. I hear them. It's very rarely that I don't hear someone has some version of a word that is a qualifier. And so at that moment, I was unsure of the content that I was creating, the podcast that I was creating, which incidentally, hilarious. That podcast I put out, people listened, and I've had more emails and reach outs about how much that was needed and how much that was what they loved it, wanted to hear it. Thank you for saying that. That was what I needed today. And I was like, that was literally me just being real. And literally.
But you used it right. I'll get to that one in a minute. I'll get to that one.
And I was just being real with people. But in that moment, I was definitely questioning, what am I doing this for? Why am I putting myself through the ringer? I remember that week thinking, do I even want to do this business? I think I even said that on the podcast. It was like, I was questioning, do I even want to do this business? Why am I doing this? What is this for? And so I would have to say a manifestation of me saying actually that many times was me questioning myself and why I'm putting myself through what I do for my business. And I know other people feel that way too.
Yeah. So there's an interesting thing too with people that are wired like you and I are, where we have a lot of sort of empathic process that goes on behind the scenes all the time. When we are feeling in those places of disconnect or misalignment, or when feel like we're not being authentic, or presenting a front in some way, then we work extra hard, consciously and unconsciously, to try and compensate for that. And one of the compensations comes through in language sometimes. So we'll use things to try and reinforce the fact that we're legitimate, or that we are being honest, or that we really care. And that comes up as just the opposite, though, because of, especially when it's overused, an actually or an honestly here or there, especially when it is aligned with the statement you're making, is a useful part of language. But it's the overuse, and it's the disconnect of what you're saying and how you're saying it, or what you're linking it up to, that can become problematic. But just like you're talking about, it is a window into understanding what's going on with ourselves if we will put the time and energy into being mindful and not judgmental of what's really happening. Mm-hmm. And you just made me think of something that I think is a really good point to make right here. So there's this whole culture of, you've heard the phrase, fake it till you make it. It comes out of a common approach to, yeah, I do too. And it's actually very detrimental in most respects. Now, I think there are some places where pushing through to get to the other side of something, the idea of that is okay. But when that becomes your mantra for everything, it's very undermining, it's very ineffective, and it's harmful. But the idea of doing something because it needs to be done, not just because of how you feel in that moment, is important, as long as it's followed up with understanding where the disconnect is. Like, you ask some hard questions of yourself. Is this something I really want to be doing? Am I losing my passion for this? Am I losing my drive for this? Or do I just feel crappy today?
I just needed some sleep is what it ultimately.
Exactly. For me, a lot of times I need to eat. I forgot to eat. And no, the world is not ending. I just need to eat.
For those of you who don't know, I literally carry snacks in my purse.
For me.
For Jonathan, if we are traveling or training together or whatever it is, and I know that his blood sugar gets low, I have asked in restaurants while we're waiting to be seated, like, can I get a bread basket? Because this guy's going to end up on the floor.
We're going to have a meltdown right here. Fortunately, I don't usually get hangry.
Yeah.
But I just lose it. I just kind of disappear.
Yep.
So
yes, it's asking those hard questions. I had a conversation with my son the other day about there's who we are in the public eye, and then there's who we are behind closed doors. And it came from my daughter. They had laundry that I had folded, and my daughter went, grabbed her laundry, went upstairs to go put it away. He saw her do that, and so he went and grabbed his laundry to go put it away. Number one, I was thinking, oh my gosh, awesome leadership, Neela. Great job. Number two, I was thinking, great for him I knew he didn't want to do it, but he's like, I'm going to do the right thing. And later on, I found the basket shoved in his closet. And I said, okay, here's the thing. I know that you did that, and that felt really good for me to notice that you went on your own and grabbed the basket and you followed your sister's leadership. And I was so, so proud of you. I said, but seeing that you shoved it in your closet tells me that you're not the same behind closed doors when no one's looking. And it's when you're the same, when no one's watching as you are when everyone's watching. I said, that's integrity. That's consistency. And that has been one of the best things about having this podcast is being able to share what's really happening as I'm going through life and business, and being able to do that from a very real place for people, not hiding. It's really increased my, I don't know what I'd call that, self-esteem, whatever it is.
Self-awareness too, I would say.
Self-awareness, all of it. I don't even know what to call it, but I was just really thinking about how when people can get to a point where they're the same in all areas of their life, you have so much more courage because people already know, like, what is someone going to do to hurt me? That they know I've screamed at someone in a parking lot. They know I've had some things I'm not proud of. And so it takes away any power anyone has when you own all the parts of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And I have a little summary at the end of this about ways we make some changes, some positive changes. And one of the key factors is this idea of authenticity, like owning when you're unsure, owning when you're uncertain, owning when you don't feel well. And again, that doesn't mean that you don't do something that needs to be done, but owning it and being aware of it and without judgment in a mindful way and say, in this context, this is how I feel right now. And these are the things I'm capable of right now. And this is how I have to say things in order to get to the other end of this while I'm feeling like this. You know, it's staying honest with yourself and honest with others. And that is something that's actually come out of this podcast, that I knew that there would be a lot of self-discovery and that you and I would explore some things that we were hoping would land for other people, but it was also about our own growth too. And that's been profound after a year of doing this. So very good, very welcomed and unforeseen consequence, I guess, of.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's really interesting. I definitely was feeling vulnerable that week. The other word that I would put up is that when I was feeling vulnerable, and so using actually was somehow linked to that. I don't know exactly how that was linked, but definitely that was something that was coming up as well.
I tried to summarize kind of what I thought were areas where qualifiers were likely to arise. So I'll just read through that list because you're speaking to several of those actually. Oh, now I'm doing it. So one of them that we don't always think about, but is very common, especially in corporate settings where there is maybe a discrepancy between skill levels or experience levels or age gaps, is we're trying to seek validation that we are competent. So we're using qualifiers in order to elicit feedback. So sometimes we might make a statement like, well, I'm not an expert in this area, but because we're unconsciously seeking somebody to say, oh, you know this job, you know this, you've got this. We're looking for some validation. Or we might be trying to avoid negativity. So insecure individuals, they might use qualifiers to try and limit the risk of a negative response. So they're trying to elicit positive interaction in a way, but it's coming from a place of avoidance, which
I used to do that all the time. All the time. That was actually one of the things that I put on my map when I did my initial immunity to change map. And we mapped out when we were in that workshop, I put that I make fun of myself before making a request. So I would say things like, I know I'm being crazy right now, but could you tell me, or could you do XYZ for me? Or I know that this is just me being overcautious. So I was like, I would take whatever judgment I thought you were going to make of me, state it, own it, and then make my request.
Yep. And that's actually perfect segue into this last one I have. I called it preempting criticism. You're anticipating that someone's going to be critical or someone's going to judge you. So you preemptively demean yourself or demean your opinion or demean your skill level in some way. You undermine it yourself so that it's like, I'm ahead of this now. So yeah, there's a lot more. Like you could expand that list substantially, but I try to think of the times that this usually comes up for me and that I've seen it in others where there's a particular speaker that I really like and I like her work. I like the way she presents, but she does use a lot of qualifiers and she undermines her own opinion quite often. And I don't think that she's consciously aware that she does it.
Is it in a funny way?
Sometimes, but not always.
Because I was listening to another podcast. I'm going to lose her name. I know her first name's Vanessa. Anyway, she was talking about how people who have sort of a more neurotic nature, like they tend to be more towards the anxious side of things, which I can relate to this. They tend to be very self-deprecating and they do it in a funny way and it's endearing to other people, but it is a coping mechanism. So
yeah.
Is there any degree, I think my question is there any degree in which it's effective or it's okay, or is it really?
I think it tracks back to that whole authenticity and alignment piece because we can utilize self-deprecating language or we can utilize humor so that we're more relatable, so that it opens some gateways for more effective communication. But when it becomes excessive or it's out of alignment with sort of the follow-up to it, it just becomes hateful to you. It's like, why are you saying those things about yourself? And remember what the statement I started with, the big picture statement I started with, the words we say to others are the words we're saying to ourselves. So if you do that long enough, you're going to believe it. When you say, I am a horrible judge of character, I always screw that up, or I am the worst public speaker on the planet. But I'm getting up here and I'm doing, there's this undermining quality to that when the language is so specific and when it's consistently used. So that, again, it's just being aware.
I've mentioned this before on the podcast, but my son his preschool teacher said that we don't say our thoughts, certain like those negative thoughts out loud, because if we think it and then we speak it, our ears hear it a second time and our heart might believe it.
Yeah.
And I love that.
That makes me tear up every time you say it.
Yeah.
Especially a teacher saying that to a little kid. It's so important and so overlooked quite often.
And it's so true. I was even just thinking yesterday how sometimes these words that we have are all encompassing. I was dropping off homemade pizzas. My children have some dietary challenges. And so they really desperately want to be able to have pizza day at school, but it doesn't work for them. So I make pizza at home and I send it to them. And I usually send it and they just eat room temperature pizza and they're fine with it. But I had to run to the grocery. And so I'm making this pizza and I sat there and in my head, I was like, I'm such a good mom. And I thought, well, that's a fascinating thing because we do a lot of this. I'm a good mom. I'm a bad mom. And I thought, well, is this me doing this make me a good mom? Because I could do this and still not prepare my kids for life. And that's not necessarily a good mom. So I thought, I'm a thoughtful mom. And I thought, I just wanted to share that because I think we can be a little bit more specific than just being so broad, good or bad, and really own the qualities that we do have as they apply to the context of what we're doing, instead of this, I'm good and I'm bad, or I'm this and I'm that.
Yeah, absolutely. And this, I don't remember what episode it was, but one of our early on episodes, we talked about mindful self-compassion. And we also talked about worthiness. And this brings that up for me. This is one of those areas where mindful self-compassion is very important, where we examine the messages we tell ourselves and the judgment we put behind those messages. And we take it to a dark place quite often. We stay there and it's not things that we would ever say to someone else. Even someone we can that's just a casual acquaintance or someone we just meet on the street, but often we say those things to ourselves. And even we make those things funny for ourselves sometimes. But when it's done excessively, when it's done every time as a response to some sort of conflict or something that's challenging, then that's coming from a place that needs to be worked on.
So now what's going to happen? So there's actually, honestly, truthfully, let's see. Sorry to bother you. This might be a silly question. I was wondering, all of these qualifiers that people use, now they're aware of them. So even throughout this podcast, we've used words that and we'll talk about the literally in the next episode when we talk about language of leaders. But we say them and then we get funny about it because we hear it coming out of our mouth. So what do you suggest for starting to get rid of or be mindful of some of these words? I know you talked about the mindfulness episode.
Let's start there then with mindfulness. So practice of mindfulness is a practice. It is something that takes some effort and work and attention. The idea is when we're using it with language is that we pay attention to the words that we say and stay curious about, where did that come from? Or what's a different way to say that? And start practicing supplementing other words, taking words out of our vocabulary for the most part, or making sure words align with the intent. So that we have an understanding of why it's being used and what the intention behind it is. So I just said that mindfulness practice around language. The more you practice too, the more you become aware. Like I have this, and I'm a constant practice of mindfulness, so I'm still always working on incorporating that in my day to day. But I have started to get to the place where I feel a word coming up, like I feel that word about to happen. And that doesn't mean I always stop it or change it. It still happens sometimes, but it's like now I have this awareness that word's about to happen.
And sometimes if you're watching the video, even if you were to go back and if you were to watch the video of this podcast, if you're not watching it, there are moments I know I've opened my mouth and I've started to mouth a word that I planned that I was going to say and then picked a different word. So you'll see like our mouth start to mouth it. The sound hasn't come out yet. And then we're changing.
And that just made me think, now that you guys can actually see us, you're going to see me playing with my face a lot because I actually have to give myself kinesthetic cues to shut up sometimes or to be thoughtful of what's about to come out of my mouth. So I will literally, and I'm using that effectively and appropriately.
We're seating for the next episode, by the way. Literally, we're going to talk about literally.
I literally hold my face shut or hold my mouth shut or pull on my chin hair to remind me that this is an important thing that's coming out. It's those kind of kinesthetic cues. And a lot of entrepreneurs are very kinesthetic, and we need to learn those mechanisms that help us kind of balance the scales. So the other thing that just occurred to me is, so monitoring language, there's some phrases I've specifically worked on. And one of them is I can't, because I can't is an undermine. It's a qualifier, but it also undermines your control. You're sacrificing your own control of any given situation when you use the phrase I can't. And so when I say I can't understand how you would say something like that, first of all, it's not true, but it is me relinquishing responsibility, basically. Now, I'm not saying there aren't appropriate times to use that phrase, but I can feel an I can't coming. Like I can feel when I'm about to, I can't. And so now because I know it's coming, instead of trying to avoid saying it, I will give this little monologue about I can't. It's like, well, I started to say I can't, but I know I can. I just have to do something different. And in order to do that, I've got to better understand your perspective or whatever it is. So you take something that could be a perceived negative and that may be challenging for you, and you turn it into an opportunity to increase your capacity for dialogue, to increase your capacity for understanding. So you might turn it into a question. But being, for me at least, acknowledging and even saying it, but saying it in a different way. It's like, I can't you.
Yeah.
But now
I can't you. My mom always used to say there's no such word as can't. It's like, I assure you there is, but that's not what my teacher said.
Yeah. And another one that I used to teach this to one of my real estate classes is I try not to say I understand. I try not to say I understand, unless it is a specific context where we're sharing something that is very, like you and I having a conversation about something we've both been through. Oh, I understand what that's like when this happened. But when you're saying it to try and relate to somebody and something they're going through, it's actually a very loaded statement, because the guttural, the instinctual response is, no, you don't. You don't understand me. Mm-hmm. But if you shift that just a little bit and say, it's understandable that you would be, it's understandable that you feel, that goes to empathy and compassion. It's such a subtle change, but a very powerful one. And that's one I've had to work on, because coming from a place of psychology and therapy and counseling, the understanding, you're seeking to understand. So it comes out in language a lot. Well, I understand that you're going through a lot right now, and this could be difficult. No, you don't. You don't understand me. You don't know me. You don't know what I'm going through. But when you say it's understandable that you might have some of these things happening, or that you didn't get to this today, so.
That's really powerful. So here's my recommendation. You're not going to completely overhaul your language after hearing this one podcast, but maybe pick one thing and start to know, or just sit with this now, having heard this podcast, and listen for some of those qualifiers that you might be making, and notice how much you're using them. This is one of the things we do in the coaching with my clients, is before we make any behavior changes, we just take some time to notice, how is this showing up? Because it doesn't automatically mean that you feel a certain way, or that this is true for you, or that you overuse it. It just might be in that moment. That's what popped out. There's some pop culture things we're going to talk about in the next episode that have just become commonplace. But just see how it comes up for you. Just like me noticing how many times I happen to say actually, and then noticing, do I say it all the time? And I have found that I don't say it all the time. It is a word that I lend to when I'm feeling vulnerable, when I'm feeling insecure, but it's not something that I use all the time. And so from there, you can notice, when am I using it? When am I most likely to feel that insecurity? What's the context? And that's when you can make some adjustments. So that would be what I'd recommend as an action item off of this podcast, is just to be aware of it.
And maybe in our next episode, we'll give some more sort of how-tos related to adjusting. Yep.
That is it. We're going to talk about the language of leadership in our next episode. So make sure you hit that follow button so that you are notified when these new episodes come out every single week. We hope that today was helpful for you. As always, I teach from what's real. Now you're going to go back and hear every time I say actually, and you're going to say, oh, I wonder what's going on for her today.
Actually.
So, with all of that being said, I'm sending you so much love.
Be well, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Conscious Edge podcast. Make sure you subscribe and take a moment to be kind and share this episode with someone you care about. Leave a review to help us bring more compassionate leaders building businesses and creating wealth to the table. And for show notes, head over to consciousedge.com/podcast. This podcast and the linked materials are presented solely for general information, educational, and entertainment purposes and should not be taken as personal or medical advice or any kind of mental health treatment. Please consult a medical or mental health professional if you feel you need such services. Please be advised that all investing and entrepreneurial endeavors involve risk, and the use of the education and information on this podcast and linked materials is at the user's own risk.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM, women's voices amplified.